So welcome everybody. So as I'm sure you all know, over the next few weeks, we will be releasing a product per week. And the first product that we have on that agenda is software. So on Wednesday of this week, we released version 13.1 of Config. And in the middle of November, we will release an update to the app to go alongside it. And I would like to give you an overview of the new features that have come in version 13.1 and a sneak peek on what they will look like inside the Loxone app when the Loxone app is released to go alongside it. Version 13.1 for us, the big focus has been on energy management, because as I'm sure from everyone who's joining us from around the world has seen, since the beginning of this year, energy has become a huge topic in the world. For various different factors that I'm sure we're all aware of, energy prices have skyrocketed, and they will most likely continue to skyrocket for the foreseeable future. And this version of Config is our contribution to the world in the topic of energy management and how to be more energy conscious within our buildings. So for anyone that's just joined and who hasn't been to a Loxone webinar before, please interact. If you have any questions whatsoever, or you would like to know anything about the topics that I'm covering, whether they be exactly related to what I'm talking about, or whether they're along the same lines and you just like to know whether X, Y, Z is possible, please engage with us and I will answer to the best of my ability, either live, or if I can't answer live, I will check the chat at the next available opportunity. You can use either the questions and answers function inside Zoom, or if you don't have that, if you're on a mobile device, you can use the chat instead. So this being a software-based topic, I think it only right that we spend most of our time inside Loxone Config. So hopefully you'll all be able to see my config screen now. And the first section that I would like to cover and talk about is monitoring of energy. Now, energy monitoring within Loxone used to be quite fixed down. We used to have two options, which were the utility meter, which I'm not even sure is in there anymore, and the energy monitor. These were really our only functions available within Loxone Config and the app. And they worked pretty well, to be honest, but they weren't hugely flexible. A few years ago, we went on a company trip to Belgium, and we saw a structure, a tourist attraction they have there called the Atomium, and it gave us an idea for how we could better lay out energy management. And that is that we could see all of the things within a building that either produced or consumed energy as independent atoms floating around a central nucleus. And we decided that we wanted to rearrange our app to follow that same kind of structure. So the first most important change and addition and feature within Config 13.1 is all new meter blocks. So we used to have just one global meter block called the utility meter. And it wasn't flexible enough. So what we've done is we've created 7 new meter blocks to fit any purpose. And these meter blocks are designed around the physical meter that you would have within a property. And the important thing is that they're universal. So it could be an electricity meter, but it could also just as easily be a heat meter or a water flow meter. Anything that has a flow of energy that you want to measure, you can measure with the various meter blocks. And the meter blocks are named by the physical meter that you would have installed. So if we start with the very first one, which is, funnily enough, just called meter. This is a single direction meter. So this is a meter that is only able to tell you about flow of energy in a single direction. An example of that could be something like a water flow meter. Or in the case of a more traditional building, like maybe our office, something like solar PV. We can only take energy from the PV. We can never send energy back up to the sun. So it's single direction. So something like the meter block would be appropriate for it. So I'm going to add a solar PV block on there. And I am going to find our solar edge inverter. And I'm going to tie in the relevant inputs into this block, which is how much power we're producing and what our total production energy is, which go into these two inputs here. Power or flow and meter reading. Nice and simple. Other than that, for the block, the only real other things there are to fill in is you can have an icon for it. And this uses our wonderful new icon library. So all of the icons that are available on the Touch Pure Flex are now available within config as well for you to use. So this is our solar PV, our solar energy production. So I can pick a nice icon that suits. Other than that, the only other parameters is statistics and any offset you need to have on the meter. And that would be our first meter block. A couple of questions. Will I send the link to the recording to partners? Yes, everyone who attends this webinar, we will send you an email with a YouTube link with this recording. Somebody's asked, I've integrated my digital meter with Loxone via ULUS. Is anything going to change the polling interval for API calls? The minimum now is 10 seconds. If not, what possibilities are there to have real-time figures? Honestly, after years and years and years of us handling energy management topics, you don't need to read power more than every 10 seconds. We're actually incredibly quick by comparison to most on the market. If you look at most energy monitoring solutions on the market, they're 30-second or minute. I'm actually working on a project at the moment with a Loxone partner called the Energy House, which is a research study with the University of Salford. And they care very, very deeply about being able to monitor energy at a rapid pace. And even they don't need power readings more than every 30 seconds. So 10 seconds is honestly, it's more than enough. What is the plan to implement hourly price data in config, for example, Nord Pool? I'll show you that if I get an opportunity. We have something similar in the UK. I'll keep that question up and I'll see if I can get to it later. So there is the first of our new meter blocks, which is the meter, so a single direction reading. The next important meter block is the meter and storage. This is a function block that you would use for, as the name suggests, battery storage. So if you had, say, a Tesla Powerwall or a Sonnen battery or a Victron or any other battery storage you could imagine, this would be the meter that you would use for that. I don't have a real battery, so I've just got a pretend Sonnen battery here, so I'll always see the values as 0, but I'll show you it anyway. And again, you tie your battery power in there, and you can also tie your meter readings in there as well for delivery and consumption. There is also an input for the current storage level. So battery charge level would then go in there. So there's our first 2 meter blocks. So you can see it's now very, very granular in the approach. You have different meter blocks for the different physical meters or physical devices you would have within a building. The next important meter block is the meter bidirectional. So our solar PV our generation meter only goes one direction. The sun makes energy, which we take. But some meters or some things within a building, energy can go two ways. A great example for that would be our grid meter. So this is the main meter that is provided by our energy provider. This can be bidirectional. It can read two ways, because as well as being able to take energy from the grid, if we have, say, solar PV, we can also provide data. We can also provide energy back to the grid. So it's bidirectional. So this one I've called grid, and in here I can tie in our grid power. And then you see there's two inputs for consumption and delivery energy. So exported energy would go to delivery and imported energy would go to consumption. So you can see it's really, really simple to build this up. I think at this point, if I save into my mini server and show you how this will look in the app, because we have there the fundaments of a typical building. We have solar PV, grid reading, and maybe battery storage. And so how this will look like in the app. This is a, oh, sorry, I realize I'm going to have to keep doing different screen shares because I've only got the one monitor. This is an internal version of the app. So this is the app that will be released in the middle of November. We are still working on it, so please bear with us if you do see any slight oddities in there. But if I head into my central page, here are my various meters that I've just added under the energy category. Here is the battery one, and you can see first and foremost a complete redesign of how these things look within the app. We have really, really worked hard to make a much more beautiful interface for your customers to see and visualize. We've actually completely reworked the framework that the app is built on. It's now built on something called the React framework, and it allows us to have these much, much better visualizations. So for the battery, there's not much to show here because I don't have a real battery, but you can get the gist. You'll be able to see whether you're currently charging or discharging the battery and what the current percentage storage level was. If I go on to something like the grid readings, I should hopefully, if my, oh dear, I don't seem to be reading anything from my Solar Edge. Oh, interesting. That's a shame. Okay, in that case, let's fake something. So if I fake it on the grid that we are currently pulling, let's say 10 kilowatts, you'll see here in the app that the app interface changes to show that as well. You can show that, you can see that brief spike just there on the power value that it's showing that we're drawing 10 kilowatts. And again, you get that really, really nice visualization for the delivery and the consumption. I'll tell you what, as it doesn't seem to be visualizing properly on my system, what I'll do is I'll just quickly switch to our office system so that you can see that in here. Again, the grid, you can see there very, very nice visualization. It'll tell you exactly how much you've consumed from the grid and exactly how much you've delivered to the grid on either a live basis, a daily basis, a weekly basis, monthly or yearly. So really, really nice new visualizations there inside the Loxone app. So all of this data provided in a much, much more fundamental way. Okay, I will just switch back to my test mini server. And so that is the fundaments of the new meter blocks. Some other new meter blocks we have, because I said that there were 7 of them. The same blocks that I've already shown you. So the meter, the bidirectional meter, and the meter and storage. Those blocks are designed for a meter where we can directly read the values as a value. So for instance, a Modbus meter or an IR meter reader. Some meters that you'll get from the market will be what's known as an S0 meter. And these are meters that have a pulsed output on them, where a set number of pulses will mean a set amount of kilowatt hours being drawn from the meter. For those kind of meters, we have exactly the same meter blocks again, but as pulsed variations. So the meter in storage, and meter bidirectional, we have available as pulse versions as well if you have a pulse meter. Then, to bring all of your meters together, because at the moment we have a very, very disparate visualization. We have our meters, but they're all separate from each other. They're different atoms. We need that atomium to bring them all together. Sorry, getting the hang of all of these different screens. So we need that atomium to bring them all together so that we have a nice centralized visualization for these different meter blocks. And this is where we have created a new block called the energy flow monitor. This block will take all of the meters that you have within a building, and it will give you a centralized visualization for them. So I'm just going to put my energy flow monitor down here on the page. As soon as you add it to the page, it will open with this pop-up box. On this pop-up box, all you need to do is press add meter and then add the various different meters you have within your building. Somebody asked about my Solar Edge. We integrate with the Solar Edge over Modbus IP. So we have Modbus IP to our Solar Edge inverters. So, energy flow monitor. I have my solar PV, my grid, and my battery that I want to visualize in there. For these 3 meters, you can change the order that they appear in within the overall structure of the flow monitor. So I, for instance, would want my grid at the top, then my solar, then my battery. For each of these meters, you can again edit the icon for them. So for my grid, maybe want a symbol something like this. For my battery, maybe something like this. You can also set a type for the consumer, a type for the meter, sorry. So consumer would be something that is drawing power, like an end product. Our grid meter is obviously for our grid, so we would set grid there. Our solar PV is a producer because it produces energy. And you can see the battery, it has already filled it out for me that it is a storage device. You can then also set the recording interval for these devices as well. It's a recording interval, so statistics for power and for meter reading. We have determined through, again, lots and lots and lots of checking that for a nice overview that gives you the data you need, but isn't too much statistics being written, that 30 and 60-minute intervals are perfect. On the meter reading, because it's energy, it's total energy used, you can even go a little bit longer if you would like to. And then you also have the ability to set the units that these meters are reading, because as I said, this isn't just for electricity. This could be for liters and liters per minute. It could be for heat. It could be for anything you want to read. And then when we've saved that in, I can see now my Solar Edge inverter has gone to returning no values. That's perfect. It's picked the exact right amount, the exact time to not work for me. That's just typical luck, but I'll save this in and show you as well. And energy flow monitor, and here we have it. So this is really disappointing for me that my Solar Edge has picked this exact moment to stop responding, because I was very much looking forward to showing you all my Solar Edge readings. Devastated. got the right IP address. Yeah, I've got the right port number. That is a shame. Oh well. So I remember I need to keep switching screen. So here is the energy flow monitor. So if I had real values being given from my meters that were actually deciding to work, if I just again trick it into showing me I'm producing something, then you would see that appear within the flow monitor. Unfortunately, Modbus reworks itself so quickly. There we go. So you can see that now within the flow monitor, that you get this very nice diagram showing you exactly where things are moving from and to. So you can see there on my solar PV, I've just faked it to say that I'm generating 10 kilowatts. And you can see that moving over to other. Other is the building if you don't have any other meters that say this is the building. So in my case, I just have the grid and the solar. So there's no definitive way to say other is the building, but it can be assumed to be. So other, you can see all of the power and the energy moving over there. And again, we would get the same visualization for our production. You'll be able to see it again. I'll switch over to our office in a minute, and you'll be able to see when it's consuming, when it's exporting to the grid, again, all on very, very nice graphs. And again, available live for the day, for the week, the month, and the year. So I will show you that on our office. So on our office, you have to bear in mind that we did only implement this a couple of days ago. So it thinks that the last month's worth of generation has happened in one day, but it still gives you a nice idea of the visualization. So energy flow monitor, again, nothing happening live because I've turned off the solar edge from our office to bring it into the webinar, which hasn't worked, which is brilliant. But if I go to the weekly, you can see there we get a nice visualization that we have imported 4.4 megawatt hours from the grid, and we've exported 1.6 megawatt hours back to the grid. You can see as well, we again have our nice pie charts where it shows us our self-consumption, it shows us our grid export, consumption, energy from the grid, all of that very, very nicely visualized over a period of time. So it is the fundamental prospect or aspect for any well-designed energy system of saving money. The first thing you need is data. The first thing you need is to know where your energy is going. Once you know where your energy is going, you can work out how to save it. Perfect. So I'll switch back to config. And that's those blocks. The energy flow monitor does have a couple of extra parameters. These parameters are where you can put in your price per unit that you pay to import energy from the grid and the price that you get from the grid when you export energy back to them, as well as the CO2 saving reduction, which will tell you how many trees you've saved. So for instance, us in the UK, in a UK office, we get absolutely nothing for exporting to the grid, and we pay about, I think we pay about 30p per unit to import from the grid. And that will then build that into your calculations over time as well within that chart. Somebody asked about hourly price data. So we have something similar in the UK. We have, somebody else just asked as well, we have a provider in the UK called Agile Octopus that does variable pricing over the course of a day. As long as you can pull that data in by some form of API. So for instance, on Agile Octopus, we do already have a library template for that on the Loxone library. Then on your energy flow monitor, you just have that as an available parameter to select. So kilowatt hour price import, tick that. And then I would have my templates for Agile Octopus, and I would drag the current price per unit onto there. And there's your variable price sorted. What I've covered here is a pretty straightforward building. This is what I would expect most buildings to look like. a grid meter, a solar PV meter, and a battery meter with an energy flow monitor in the middle, just kind of overarching and, you know, seeing everything. But of course, a beauty within Loxone is being able to see and work things out that maybe we couldn't before. And there's a story. For many, many years, Loxone partners have been asking us, is it possible to get energy metering built into the relay extension, or built into the relays built into the mini server? You know, when will it come that we can see exactly how much power is being drawn by a device that is connected to a relay? And we have a really, really great answer for you that is free. If it is a relay, that means it turns on and off. That's the only things it does. And something that turns on or off is either 0 or 100%. So if for instance, it is a immersion heater, and it's a 3 kilowatt immersion heater, when that relay is off, it draws nothing. When that relay is on, it draws 3 kilowatts. So instead of us putting expensive hardware inside the relay extension just to tell us something that we could get by just merely counting, we actually decided that the 7th meter block that we would add is called the fixed value meter. And it is designed for exactly this purpose. You have a relay on a device, and you want to time how long that relay is on for, and that equals how much power it drew. So that is the fixed value meter. So a great example for that could be your immersion heater. The only thing we need to know is what the power rating is of that device when it's on. So it's a 3 kilowatt immersion heater. And we also need to know when it's on. And there is your energy metering for relays sorted. Same could be true of, say, if I've got a garage with some nice bay lighting and they're LED bay lights that are just on or off, I can just time however long the relay's on for. Garage bay lighting, maybe that draws a kilowatt, and I could look at that as well. Maybe I've also got a hot tub or an irrigation system or whatever else, fixed value meters, if it's something that is on or off. And then I think the final thing for the metering side, and then the energy flow monitor, is other things that we can read values from as well. So a great product, in my opinion, that we should never overlook is the smart socket, because the smart socket has built-in energy metering. So imagine we have a smart socket tied to our media cupboard where we have our amplifier and games consoles. It is one-way energy, so it would be the meter. And we could just tie in the values that we get from our smart socket. So airbase, media cupboard, and then power and energy reading again. Save that in, and there we have even more meters. And then, sorry, we have a few more questions come in. Let me just take a look at them while that is saving in. Scott saying not paying our energy bills. You'll have to talk to Tyrone about that. He's in charge of that. Somebody's asked, the old meter blocks cannot be linked to the new energy flow monitor. Is it possible to copy existing statistics to a new meter block? Yes, to be honest, I haven't tried this with the utility meter, But 100%, if you have the old energy monitor and it's all set up and working, you can right click on it and convert to energy monitor, and it will take all of the statistics along to the new energy monitor as well, to the new energy flow meter. So an energy monitor you can absolutely convert, and it will bring all of the statistics over for you. Melvin, no, sorry, you cannot measure dimmed outputs because there's no hardware inside the dimmed outputs to measure them. And the power draw from a dimmed output is not linear to the brightness. So 80% brightness doesn't mean necessarily 80% power. So no. Okay. Then we've got these extra meters. Why not also view them within the flow monitor as well? So we could bring these meters into the flow monitor just like we brought our main meters in. So I can add them, and you can see that they're available here to add as well. But these meters shouldn't have the same level of priority as my grid, my solar, and my battery does, because these are essentially sub-meters. So a new feature as well within the energy flow monitor is the ability to create groups. So you could break groups down by distribution board, by floors of a building, by whatever you wanted to. So I could, for instance, create a group here, and I could call that group consumers, because that's what all of these are. And I could drag and drop each one of these to that consumers group, and they are now essentially a subcategory of meter. And again, I can still give them nice icons for nice visualization in the app. I can set them as consumers because that's what they are. I can save that in. And I can, again, move my screen share over to the Loxone app and show you what that looks like. So I'll switch back to our webinar app, head over to my energy flow monitor again. And here you can see just how that looks like when you start adding in submeters. So we now have this new category called consumers. You can see that the visualization is a bit wrong because my solar edge isn't working. What would really be happening if it was reading values properly is you would see the grid feeding down into other and consumers. And you can see just this little semicircle appear behind the consumers badge. That means that there's a group behind it. And if I click on this, you will see it expand into those other meters that I created in config. So there's my media cupboard, my garage bay lighting, and my immersion heater. If I go and turn on my immersion heater, then you will see within the energy flow monitor, look at that, there is the immersion heater showing us on. And each of these are still meters, so we can still see that nice interface and graphing for them as well. So really, really beautiful new visualization. Perfect. And this is it for me on metering. I have a couple of other topics to talk about, but that is it on metering. So I will use this opportunity just to check Q&A. I think most things came in through the chat, so please just give me a second to look. I think I was answering for Adrian about hourly rates in the app, and that's when it cut off. So are hourly rates available to change in the app? Yes, absolutely. If you are the customer and you want to change them, all you need to have is access to expert settings. If you have access to expert settings as the customer, you go in here, and there you go. There's the ability to change them within the app. So yes, that is possible. Okay, wow, loads of questions coming in. Flexible. So did I get cut off on the variable pricing as well? Okay, if I did, again, just a really, really quick recap, absolutely possible as well. So on something like Agile Octopus, we already have a library template for it on the Loxone library. So add that in, and then on your energy flow monitor, it's really simple. It's just a parameter. So select it as an available input and just drag your API commands onto that price there. And that's your Agile pricing done. Okay. What about if the relay controller wall outputs? If the relay controls a wall outlet and there could be a number of different things on the wall outlet, you're going to need an energy meter for that. If it's something that isn't, if it's not fixed, as the name of the block says, it's a fixed value meter, it only works if whatever is connected to it is definitely fixed. How would that work with a thermostatic immersion heater where it turns on and off when it is at temp, but the relay is from Loxone? It wouldn't. If the immersion heater is turned off through a shut-off switch, but the Loxone relay is still on, Loxone's still going to think it's drawing 3 kilowatts. The answer to that really is to make sure that that doesn't happen through good system installation. You can do that by maybe installing a temperature probe within the tank so that you know what the temperature of the tank is so that you're not turning the immersion heater on unnecessarily, or just good scheduling so the immersion heater won't turn on for longer in Loxone than it would need to heat the tank up. Power readings from tree lighting is a very, very good one. Not at this point in time, maybe in the future. Will you have to start installing bigger SD cards? No, I don't believe so. I don't think there's any issue with the storage capability on the SD card. It's the read-write cycles. 8 GB is endless amounts of storage for simple data. It's the number of times we write to the SD card. And that's why the default statistics times are 30 and 60 minutes. That's a good idea. Basil has said just use the immersion heater, the built-in thermostat, just get a digital input from it if possible. Yeah, you can use a clamp meter, loads and loads of ways. Okay, perfect. So there's a bunch of questions answered. Please keep firing them over. Happy to keep answering them. Someone's asked about load shedding. It's already on my agenda. So next topic from me is not load shedding just yet, I'm afraid. So there is our fundamentals of energy monitoring. You can see we've made it much more flexible with a brilliant interface in the center. The next thing I'd like to go over is a brand new wallbox function block. So we have had a wallbox function block inside Loxone for years and years and years. It was always quite simplistic though. It was designed around 2 makes of car chargers, and it had a few very, very simple features. And we've decided to completely reinvent how our wallbox functions work, because many, many wallboxes on the market are quite simple. They're pretty dumb devices. And as you all know, the power of Loxone is making dumb things smart. So we have a completely reworked wallbox block. The new wallbox block. Quickly on the parameters, there's really only 2 parameters. If you have a wallbox where you can set a variable charging amount, so you can actually dictate how much the car that is plugged into the wallbox can charge, which you can do on some chargers through APIs, you have those parameters available there as minimum charging and maximum charging power. As well as this, if you double click on the wallbox block, you have a huge range of different available functions within here, charging presets. So if you wanted to do, for instance, schedule charging, you now can on the wallbox. If you wanted to do charging only when the sun's out, you can. you have 5 available modes within the wall box. So you can see the default one here is max charging power. So charge at a maximum to 11 kilowatts. You could add another one in here, which could be arrive home from work charging, which again might be 11 kilowatts. And you could activate that on the block through the input and tie an additional function into it like a schedule block. So there is a very, very popular wall box manufacturer in the UK that they're pretty much their entire USP, their unique sales for their product is that they can do scheduled charging. Well, hey, look at this. With a free function block, we've just turned any dumb charger in the market into what their entire unique sales pitch is for their products. And of course, within this as well would be the ability to tie it into the overall energy management system. If I save that in again, and again, I just show you the Loxone app, just so that you can get a nice visualization of what the new wall box will look like within the app. So here you can see again a much nicer interface. It will tell you whether charging is allowed or not. It will tell you whether a vehicle is plugged in. It will tell you what the vehicle is still pulling. It will tell you the current the energy that's been charged total, and you can change the charging mode. You can change the charging limit. All of the settings here are available, as well as graphing built in as well for the car charger. So all really nicely worked. So there we have the wall box block. Oh, Tyrion's just let me know that his car is currently plugged in to our office. So to give you a real world visualization of it, there is the real visualization. So you can see there's a car currently plugged in. I think we have a value of 10 correction to make on our energy meter, because I think that should be 3.6 kilowatts. But you can see current power being drawn, current charged energy, how long the car's been plugged in, and when it's been connected since. And again, we should have some really nice graphs there for how much it's consumed. So back to config. The next block that I would like to talk about goes very nicely hand in hand with the wall box, which is the new energy manager. And again, energy management, we have had the energy manager in config for years. You know, it's been there for years and years, but again, it was always a little bit too complex and a little bit too over the top. We have stripped it right down to be much simpler now. So what this will do, first and foremost, is you feed into it your various values. So you feed into it your grid power, for example. So we can take from our flow monitor our current grid power and feed that into the energy manager. And that grid power, because it's bidirectional, will be either positive or negative, depending on whether we're pulling from the grid or whether we're delivering to the grid. Delivering to the grid means we've got excess, and that's then where the energy manager comes into play and cares. And in here, you have a priority list where you list out different consumers that you want to turn on in the event that you are generating excess energy. So again, a nice example of that for me would be an immersion heater. So a hot water tank heater, because to me, that's a battery. It's somewhere that you can dump spare energy when you have it, and it can be safely stored until you need it. Again, you can add icons. You can set, is there a minimum amount of time that needs to run if it's turned on? I'm not going to bother for my immersion heater. You can say, is there a minimum amount of time that it must run every day, regardless of whether there's enough sun? For the immersion heater, probably yes. I probably want to run it for at least 1 hour per day to make sure that I've always got hot water for baths and showers. You can also say, if it has to run for a certain amount of time per day, when should that finish by? Well, I always want it to have run for an hour, and I always want it to have run for an hour by 5 p.m. every day, so that I get home to nice hot water waiting for me for a shower or a bath. And you can also set a switch on power and a rated power. So this might be a 3 kilowatt immersion heater, but I might want to say, do you know what? I want to turn it on as soon as I have at least 1 kilowatt of excess energy. So as soon as I'm over 1 kilowatt, it will turn it on because I'm happy to draw a couple of kilowatts from the grid. The other important thing about a change to the energy manager is the outputs now are both can be both digital or analog. So before it was purely digital, it would turn something on or off. Now it can be analog. So if you, for instance, have a 0 to 10 volt controlled immersion heater, you could turn the immersion heater to the exact amounts of power excess that you have generated. So I could tie this here to my immersion heater. I could do the same for my car as well. So I could have my second rule here as my car charger. And I could do exactly the same. You know, switch on maybe at 3.6 kilowatts and maximum rated power maybe 11 kilowatts if it's a decent charger. Okay, that's, and I could feed that into one of the ratings on my wall box. So I could have one of the options here on my wall box be excess solar available. Feed that into there. And that would be the car charger done. Excess solar turns on the car charger. The energy manager block now also has a couple of parameters related to the battery, because it used to be a bit complex when a battery came into play. And now it's very, very simple. You can set a minimum percentage of charge that the battery has to have. So for instance, if I set 40% in here and that my battery was 10 kilowatts, that means that I must have at least 4 kilowatts in the battery before the energy manager will start turning things on. So even if I have excess PV available, but I'm under my minimum battery charge state, the energy manager will ignore the priority list in it, and it will instead say, let's focus on charging the battery first. And it will wait until we've gone above the minimum charge state of the battery before it starts turning those consumers on at the end of the energy manager. And again, I'll have a quick save and I'll show you how this appears in the app as well. Oh, loads and loads of questions coming in. So load shedding, I will show you in a minute. Kiba, yes, Kiba will tie into the new energy manager and the new wall box. Are we planning to implement OCPP protocol? The honest answer is I don't know. As a company, you know, we have dozens and dozens of developers developing new updates, new features, new products, but they are based in a different country to me. And my job is as a sales office to make sure that we are getting products out there so that we can continue innovating and creating new products. So the honest answer is I don't know what they're working on. I can, of course, feed back anything that is worthwhile to them, though. How does Loxone talk to the wall box? Depends on the wall box. Some wall boxes have APIs available, like the Kiba P20. We've been speaking to MyEnergy in the UK for the API for the Zappi charger. Other wall boxes, it might be as simple as you turn them on and off with a relay and you have an energy meter tied to them. So it will vary depending on the model of wall box. Okay, now that that's saved in, let me show you again from the app perspective what the energy manager looks like. So energy manager we have here. Again, you can see a completely redesigned interface. You can see my immersion heater is currently on. It's on because I've actually still left it on from my stairwell light switch. And again, you get a really, really nice visualization in here for your consumption and your available power. And if you want to, you can always manually turn things on and off. And you can see there, it will stay on until midnight if you've manually enabled it, or off until midnight. You can see a nice little M symbol there to show you that you've manually adjusted it. So there is the energy manager. I think to break up the flow, I'm just going to answer a few more questions, just if we've got them. Can I explain the peak load function in the load manager? Do you mean the energy manager? And do you mean the rated power? So again, just a clarification on this. The rated power is the power that the device will draw when it's on fully. You know, if this is a relay-driven device like an immersion heater, it's 3 kilowatts when it's on. The switch-on power is the amount of excess you want to have available before that device turns on, because you may want to have your immersion heater turn on before you've got the full amount being generated from the sun for it. Can I easily build in code-based charging for customers? I'm not sure what you mean exactly, I'm afraid. If you want to type with a bit more detail, I'll try and answer you the best I can. Will the new dashboards with React also be implemented on other statistics? It's a good question. I haven't looked into it thoroughly, and we haven't got any statistics, I'm afraid, turned on for other things in our office. So I can't answer you on that. As I said, this internal version of the app was only made available to us as staff about a day ago. So it's fairly new for me as well. Bradley, on the MyEnergy topic, we are waiting on MyEnergy. They told us 9 months ago that they were still developing their API. When we caught up with them last month, they said they were still developing their API. So we have to wait for them to make their API first. How would you go about with supplying the immersion heater with variable power? Some more modern immersion heaters have this built in. Otherwise, I'm sure Adrian Brown is going to be very, very generous now and send a link over on the chat, because I know he does it in his house. You can buy 0 to 10 volt controlled solid state relays that will vary the output power. Is there the possibility to suggest / follow up on work in progress, yes, no, of implementations of APIs in different vendors of wall boxes? To be perfectly honest, there are a number of manufacturers that we will work with directly as a manufacturer ourselves. So this you will see from, for instance, Miele Home Connect, or Home Connect itself, or Tesla with the Tesla Powerwall, Valent with EE Bus. These are direct integrations that we as a manufacturer have done in tandem with the other manufacturer. Again, this is held by the software team in Austria, and as independent branches of Loxone, we're not always privy to what is being currently worked on. Otherwise, if it is API information, you have the API document from that manufacturer. Get in touch with your Loxone partner coach, and they will help you to the best of their ability implementing a template for it. Okay, I'm going to carry on, guys, just because I'm aware of the time and just a couple more topics to cover. So back to config again. A much simpler function block than all of the ones I've covered so far. It's a very nice, very simple one that has been implemented with version 13.1, which is called the text generator. This is an incredibly simple function block. You have a text editor inside it where you can freely type out text. You can also use values incoming from inputs on the block. So I could take, for instance, I don't know, VC on the wall box means that there's a vehicle connected to my wall box. I could take that into input 1 and actually not into input 1, sorry, I could take that into the trigger. And in the text generator, I could type in a car has been plugged into car charger. And I could take this text output here and I could tie it into something like a text-to-speech message from my audio server. So this is just a very simple block for being able to do text messages, text-to-speech messages, much simpler than we used to have to do with things like status blocks. So much simpler block there. And then I think I'm pretty much all done. I think the last thing from me really was just still on the topic of energy management. A quick note as well that the IR meter reader has got a lot more functionality with the latest update as well. So we have the IR meter reader Air, which is just here. Apply that. We have added a lot more functionality inside of that. So there's a lot more meters that should be supported, for instance, on the IEC option there. And we now also support M-bus reading over IR through the IR meter reader. So if you live in a country where your energy supplier doesn't turn off the IR interface on your grid provided meter, then you might find that the IR meter reader Air is now a perfect product to be able to read your meter. Other than that, I think now is just time for questions and answers. So Mark, I want to record a charging session for a customer based on identified customer using NFC code touch. Bit off topic maybe. No, not at all. So you will notice, oh, sorry, I forgot to talk about load shedding. This actually semi goes into load shedding. So we do have a function block for load shedding. It is called the load manager. In there, you put in a list of all of the products or all of the consumers that you would want to turn off in the event of needing to shed load. So the biggest one that I can think of would be the car charger, because that could be drawing 11 kilowatts. And you can again tie your grid power in from your energy flow monitor into here. In the load manager, you can set the maximum rated power for your building. So in the UK, we're not suffering with this too much at the moment, but in many countries, power supplies into buildings are being derated. But at the same time, those buildings are installing more and more heavy use consumers like car chargers. So you may have a maximum usage available in your building of 20 kilowatts. And of course, if your car charger is pulling 11 kilowatts, that's half of your building's allowance gone. Tie in as well a 3 kilowatt immersion heater, a 3 kilowatt kettle, a 3 kilowatt induction hob, a 3 kilowatt oven. And very quickly, you can go over what the grid can provide. So you tie your grid power into here, you set your maximum power level, You put in your priorities of what you want to shut down, and then you link them to the relevant block that they go to. You'll see that on many, many blocks where we believe that that would be a heavy load appliance, you'll start seeing dedicated inputs to turn that block off. So on the wall box block, it is the EC input, which enables or disables charging. And that would then disable the charging if the load manager went above a specified value. We've also now added a 15-minute interval into the load manager as well, because many grid systems have like a 15-minute interval timer that they work to for peak allowances, for peak tolerances. Then moving on to Mark's question about the car charger and NFC code touch. Yes, absolutely. So you'd have your NFC. Just going to add the block there. Apologies for my page getting a little bit messy. And let's say that you wanted to activate the car charger only when somebody presented a fob and only for 1 hour. It's really, really easy. You've got the duration of output delay here. So this is how long the output of the NFC block will stay out active for if you present a fob. You could set that for the length of time that you wanted. And then you just link the NFC code touch into the enable charging input. Done. This input is inverted, so I would need to take that inversion away for that function to work. But the load manager needs it inverted, so I'll leave it inverted for the sake of the webinar. But you would take that inversion away from enable charging. Somebody presents their fob, it will enable charging for 1 hour, and then it will disable charging again. Recording a charging session. So has that customer then charged their car? To be honest, I would just take the VC output here, which tells you that a vehicle is connected, and I would link that into, say, a tracker. Would it be possible to end the session based on TDA metering? Yeah, of course. So you would take this output here from the NFC into, or I don't know, maybe a switch block, and you would turn a switch block on. The switch block in turn would turn the wall box on, and then you would turn the switch block back off after maybe, I don't know, maybe 11 kilowatt hours have been pulled from the meter. Something like that. But yeah, absolutely doable. It's just logic. It's just building up those blocks. Okay, what other questions have we got? Can you not send messages to the app? Yeah, of course you could. Under the messages category under the messages category in config, you have the ability to create push notifications. So where are we? Messages, there we go. Messages, you can create a push notification. You could drag that push notification out and tie it to your text generator. And there you go. There would be a push notification as text with whatever text you'd fed from the text generator. Okay. ULES as a grid input. Sorry, I can't remember what the question was, Renee. We cut out halfway through due to an internet issue. If you want to type it again. Does the load manager take in account if you have a 3-phase and neutral grid and single-phase consumers producer? I'm not sure why it would need to. Are you talking about if you would need to monitor each phase separately because each phase is rated to a different current, in which case it's just 3 load managers. That's the beauty of Loxone, is it's just all multiplication. If you only have one phase or one board or one thumb, something that you need to look at, you create one block. If you have two, you create two. If you have three, you create three. The beauty of Loxone, it's just all buildable. How to use I'm sorry, Renee, I don't know what ULES is. If you want to explain a bit more about the problem, I'll see if I can help with the solution, but I don't know what a ULES is. Okay, any more questions as well while Renee is typing? Feel free to keep asking. So ULES is available to monitor. So ULES is available to monitor the SO from the digital meter. I'm sorry, but if it's an SO meter, why not just wire it into a digital input on the mini server? You'll have to forgive me. It's not a product we have in the UK, so it's not one I have any knowledge of. I will try and answer the best I can, but I'm probably going to need a bit more. Okay, Dave, on the meter block, you connected meter reading and power flow. Can you just use the power flow input on its own if you only have this data available? Yes, of course you can. You can just connect power flow and it can do the rest for you. So you can see there in the description, if only this input is used, the meter reading is also calculated from it. So if you don't have the meter reading for whatever reason, you can just use power flow. So essentially, Loxone could fully replace an EV charge point, provided you have the relevant safety features, etc. DC, RCD, pen fault detection. Loxone can then load, shed, delay charge start times, but you have a much more capable unit. Yeah, absolutely. I would say with the new Wallbox function block, we have just taken every USP that every car charging company has, and we put it into a single block. So if company X, they only do this, and that's their USP, and company Y, they have this, and that's their USP. The Wallbox function block probably does them all. People, so I can see somebody's asked about energy prices of Belpex in Belgium. The honest answer is, I'm really sorry, guys. I would love to be able to tell you the answers to every single one of these. I am only a UK partner coach, I'm afraid. I have no knowledge of energy providers and APIs of different countries. No knowledge whatsoever, I'm afraid. It is well above my ability to answer that. All I can tell you is things that I'm aware of in the UK. So we have a company similar in the UK, a provider similar in the UK called Octopus Energy. They have an API called Agile Octopus. And it's basically just very simple API calls where you have a URL, and inside that URL, you insert a token that they give you, and it returns your data to you. So very easy to implement. Whether your provider in Belgium has the same available, you will have to ask them, I'm afraid, and speak to your Belgian partner coach. To be honest, they're going to know far better than I am. Same as well for Nordpool API. Again, UK based, don't know anything about Nordpool, never heard of them before. Please reach out to your partner coach in your relevant area for assistance. Email statistics nicely for a lot of loads simultaneously. That's a good question. Just trying to think of the best way to do it. I would use a status block to take all of the inputs from the various meters and concentrate them into a single string that you could then output to email. Adrian, is there a template for Octopus in the library? There should be. If not, it's definitely on our documentation in the UK if you go on the integrations section. Any new functionality with day ahead hourly pricing to help shift loads to lowest price hours up ahead? Yeah, it's just basic logic building. You just need a few function blocks. So again, as an example with Agile Octopus, they give you an estimate of what like the next hour's price is going to be, and it's just building logic. Cool. I think we pretty much have all of the questions answered. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining. I hope you have enjoyed. Apologies for the interruption halfway through. I will make sure that Tyrion pays our utility bills so that we don't lose internet again on the next one. For everyone who has attended, we will send you an email next week with the YouTube link as well. But I hope everyone has a fantastic weekend. Config is available now. App will be available in the middle of next month. So please keep an eye out for it and use it. And, go ahead and save everyone lots and lots of money on their energy bills and make lots and lots of money yourself selling Loxone. So thank you very much, guys, and have a great evening.